Before we kick off today's show, just want to remind folks one more time about this Bagels and Bloody Marys thing we're doing. One of those great houses on Fifth Avenue. We're going to be convening there to watch some workouts Saturday morning. So this is coming right up, Saturday the 30th, tomorrow or today, depending on when you're watching this show. I think we're going to get kicked off about 7:30. Sign up, come join. And even if you can't come join, make a donation to support events like this and come to the next one. trfinc.org/players is the place to go to find the sign up for our Bagels and Bloodies on the backstretch, all to benefit our friends at the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, trfinc.org/players. Hello and welcome to the Late Week in the Money Players podcast, which is also in the middle of our Horse Players Happy Hour. Want to encourage everybody listening to participate in Horse Players Happy Hour every week. An amazing deal for players. We've got this tour. You only have to play 1 week to be eligible to participate in the prize pool. We've got $20,000 added as far as that goes. All you got to do, go to horseplayers.com, put up $20 and play Horse Players Happy Hour every week on Thursday. And best of all, the rake goes to Thoroughbred Aftercare, our friends at Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, and also the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatow, coming to you live at the Brentwood this Sunday, as I will be every Sunday for the rest of the week, and joined by TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are things?
All good, Pete. Looking forward to chopping up this weekend's racing. We've got a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Sprint out at Del Mar. We've got a Grade 1 Sprint at Saratoga. We've got a 3-year-old prep. We've got a Pacific Classic prep. You name it. I feel like we've got all bases covered.
Let's look back before we look forwards. We had the Grade 1 Haskell last weekend, win and you're in action for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Many thought of it as a match between Jack Christopher and Taba, but it was Cyberknife who got the spoils, making that big run in the lane and getting the money. What did you think of this performance?
Yeah, I mean, he was, when you watch the race, he was traveling the best at every point. It was a matter of, would Florent Geroux find any kind of a seam for him to run through? In fact, at the top of the lane, he's able to shoot down on the inside. He kicks on and just holds off Taba, who's closing with a flurry. I thought it was a really encouraging effort from Cyberknife, a horse that, I got to interview Brad Cox right after the race, and he still alluded to the fact that the horse mentally is still a bit of a work in progress, but he continues to improve from a speed figure standpoint. And I love that he's willing to run in behind horses, which is something Taba is not willing to do at this point in his career, which is a big red flag with a horse like that, where the talent is off the charts. But the 2 times he's been in behind horses, the Kentucky Derby, which was a non-effort, and then on Saturday or last Saturday in the Haskell, and until Mike Smith got him out into the clear, he looked like he was going to run fourth. He was just paddling along. He gets into the clear and he finishes with a flurry. So there's a part of me that looks at it and says, Taba, until he irons those things out, yes, he is certainly fast enough to be competitive, but he's got a long way to go. Cyberknife, yes, mentally still needs to continue to improve, but for him to be willing to move up into spots that are rather tight and still kick on with it, put it this way, his only problem right now is it seems like once he makes the front, he waits on somebody to come to him. Yes, that is a concern, but I think he can iron that out with a horse in time. I would rather at this point in time take Cyberknife than Taba if we're looking long-term.
I would agree. I mean, Taba looked absolutely finished turning in. I mean, I take your point that maybe some of it was he just doesn't want to be down inside of horses. And when he got outside, he continued to finish with alacrity. But, I mean, Cyberknife beat him on the square with, I think you could argue, a trickier trip. And I just don't like the way Taba travels. I mean, he's good. He's very, very good. But whether it's in his workouts or in his races itself, he's a horse who runs in spots, and it's going to be very hard to do that and think you can annex a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic. True or false?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I think it'd be hard to fully trust him. I suppose you can say the same thing about Cyberknife, just simply because he's not a completed project yet. But my thought is Taba still has a lot more learning to do compared to Cyberknife, who at this point, yes, he does have some learning to do, but for him to be willing to put himself into tough positions and still be able to persevere, I think that speaks volumes about his potential. I made the analogy that he reminds me of Authentic in that the mind has not caught up to the body just yet, but he is still producing grade 1 efforts. That's a dangerous combination going forward in a positive way, that if the mind catches up to the body, he's going to be a serious threat in any of these big races. And assuming they do continue on with the path they've mapped out to the Travers, I guess the audible would be the Pennsylvania Derby. He's a player in either one of those races. And if he moves forward from a number standpoint, here to 102 winning the Haskell, he's not miles behind some of the best. The older horses are still boss right now, but I could see an improved 3-year-old like Cyberknife continuing to jump up that buyer scale and making his presence felt.
If you were Al Gold's racing manager, Matt Bernier, what race would you suggest that they should point to next?
I would say the Travers, simply because I want to find out truly his ability at 10 furlongs. Now, I personally don't have any doubts about it. He ran the final 8th faster than anyone else in the Haskell. I thought he looked good all around. I don't think that was a horse that was slowing down. We've talked about it, and I've stolen your phrase, an upline from a pace standpoint. According to Timeform US, both of his last 2 races have been uplines where he has run faster as the race has gone on. If you're doing that at 1 mile and an eighth, I think that bodes well. In races that you figure to get some pace, you're finishing. I think there's reason to believe this horse could be even better at 10 furlongs. And if that's the case, which again, I'd like to find out in the Travers, I think he could be a very intriguing prospect come the beginning of November at Keeneland.
Credit where credit is due. That's when I've swiped myself from the great Paul Matisse, the NHC champion professional player who makes his own figures. And I absolutely learned about that concept from him. And it does seem like Cyberknife is just ever improving. It'll be interesting. As a racing fan, I definitely want to see him go in what looks like it could be a loaded Travers. Maybe we have time for a quick word on the Jim Dandy before we get things done. Before we move on from the Haskell, though, Jack Christopher, I think the Occam's razor opinion, the simplest explanation is the best. The way he traveled through the race, the way it looked at the top of the lane, he looked like he was going to win by 3. I wrote a no finish on my trip note. It seems like he's meant to cut back. Is it as simple as that?
Yeah. Anyone that's drawing any other conclusions, I think, is a bit misguided. It's not that the horse is not talented. It's just that final 1/8 of a mile came back and finally bit him. The pedigree, we were waiting for it to show up. It finally did. That doesn't mean that he's not going to be a major player in whatever one-turn race he continues on with. And I've seen some people bring up the 1-turn versus 2-turn argument. Oh, he didn't see out the trip. Well, he didn't see out the trip, but it wasn't the 2 turns that got him beat. He was in front at the top of the lane. He just didn't get that final 1/8 of a mile. I think if all things continue on this way, he's arguably the horse to beat in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile at Keeneland, going 2 turns. The talent is there. He just doesn't want to go that far.
Seems what I thought as well. As far as that goes, it was financially painful to me. And then I had the double whammy. I can't remember why. I think she liked the look of his chestnut coat or something. But Perrin picked Cyberknife. And of course, she was at the window with me. So she noticed that I bet about 40x on Jack Christopher on the fixed odds there at Monmouth Park, as she did on Cyberknife. And of course, she won and then says to me after, Daddy, you just should have bet it all on my horse. Like, yeah, thanks,
Pete, look,
thanks a lot, Perrin.
I'm going to echo the same thing, though, because fixed odds, and I mentioned it on my pod at the beginning of the week. I got down at 2:17 Eastern on Cyberknife at 10-1. And he went off
phenomenal.
At 8. And again, if you're down there in Jersey, I think it's an absolute no-brainer. If you have any sort of ability to decipher odds and know who's likely to go off shorter than someone else or whatever it may be, and you can lock in value, do it in a heartbeat. It was a no-brainer at that point.
That's fantastic. I was bad. I did bet Jack Christopher on the tote and lock in the 4 to 5, but Perrin's bet was more of a last minute thing that I just threw on the tote. So we were stuck with those 7s. But I'll tell you what else, though. It's no longer, as of yesterday, Monmouth at Monmouth. Now, if you're in the state of New Jersey, you can sign up for a Monmouth Bets account and it doesn't even matter if you're a Jersey resident. If you're in the state, you can fund and bet on this stuff. It's only Monmouth product right now. That'll change over time. But yeah, check it out. They're obviously, full disclosure, they're sponsors. But I mean, I think Matt and I are both speaking 100%.
I'm purely looking at it, and you're right. They are sponsors. They're friends of ours. I'm looking at it from a gambling standpoint and a horse player's standpoint. The more options, the better. And when you have an opportunity, if you think that there is obvious value to lock it in and not even think about it as you get closer to post, it's a no-brainer.
Let's pivot to Saratoga on Saturday. We didn't really prep. Are you prepared to talk about both the Saratoga Stakes and both the Del Mar Stakes, or what have you looked at so far?
Okay. Both of them.
So let's start off with the Vanderbilt, right? So that's race number 8. Goes at 4:50 Eastern on Saturday. Grade 1 action, a field of 6 going postward. I mean, David Aragona. So I had David on the show. I love this guy. So I had him on the show this week talking about 2-year-old races at Saratoga, evergreen conversation. Everybody should check it out. But what other morning line maker in the country has the whatever you want to call it to make Jackie's Warrior 1-5 on the morning line? I mean, he's right. That's the price. If you gave me 1-2, it would be bet of the year type stuff. He just lays over this field in the Vanderbilt as far as I'm concerned.
See, and this isn't meant as a slight to David, but he's doing his job. It always blows my mind when there's a horse that is very clearly a 1-5 shot or a 2-5 shot, and on the morning line he's made even money. I go, in what world is he going to be even money? He's not going to be. So Jackie's Warrior, full marks to David. He's going to be 1-5. I can't imagine he's 1-9. I think 1-5 is spot on. He deserves to be 1-5. He's the fastest horse in the race. I don't care that he's carrying extra weight. I'm not a big weight guy in terms of horse racing, unless we're talking about, making it up the fall high weight when they're carrying 140 pounds at Aqueduct. But I mean, Jackie's Warrior, I think he is strictly the horse to beat. If you're looking to do something, if you're looking to play the race, granted, you probably lose all value in almost every pool, just simply because everyone's going to have him keyed on top. The horse that I would at least think about including underneath is a horse that admittedly I've had quite a bit of success with, but I think he's really good. I don't know that he's a superstar, but Willie Boy is in rock solid form. And I love his ability to run on the turns. Granted, it's been at Gulfstream Park, and we'll find out if that translates upstate at Saratoga. But I think each of his last 2 races have both been very good. Heck, I thought his run down at Tampa off the layoff was really good. But if you're looking to play something, Jackie's Warrior over Willie Boy, cold punch, exact a 4-2.
I will throw in, and you can accuse me of being a homer on this one, and you might not be wrong. But I do think that Knee Deep in Snow for our friends at 10 Strike Racing will be ridden to just make one run and try to pass horses late. And I think with that in mind, tactically, if the others decide to try to tangle in any way, shape, or form with Jackie's Warrior, I think he has a chance to pass him and round out that exactness. So, I mean, look, Jackie's Warrior, we'll see what the prices are when real prices come up. I mean, like I said, if you get 1-2, you bet out on the horse. If he is the 1-5 that David predicts, and he probably should be, I don't hate the idea of playing like a little 4 with 1-2 and hoping one of those 2 gets in there underneath for the exacta. Because I know Knee Deep in Snow has run closer to the lead, but I mean, these guys, we know them. They're sharp. They ain't going to the lead. Ricardo, who won a race for them today, will be using hold-up tactics. And I think there's an opportunity he could come past them all, especially now that we have the it's interesting. It feels like the 6 is meant to be a rabbit in the race. I don't know if he's even fast enough to be a rabbit, but maybe anybody who risks getting into the teeth of that pace is also risking running last.
Pete, the only question is Jackie's Warrior 1-5 or 1-9? That's the only question. That's the only question in the race. Turn the page and move on.
Well, while we're talking about Saratoga, I think we should pivot and chat about the very next race, the Jim Dandy Grade 2 action. We've got the return to the races of some of the horses that, quote-unquote famous horses from the Triple Crown. We've got Zandon, 3rd in the Kentucky Derby. Epicenter, who I'll argue was best in both the dubious distinction of being best in the Derby and the Preakness without winning either one of them. And we've got a Preakness winner early voting in there as well. Who do you think is going to win, Matt?
I like Epicenter. Early voting. I like early voting. I think it's one of those situations where on paper there's no speed other than early voting. I suppose Epicenter is the one that can go. I talked about it on my pod at the beginning of the week. Epicenter's in the darned if you do, darned if you don't position. If you don't go after early voting, he just walks on the front end, goes off, struts his stuff, and wins. If you go after him, you have to put him away and then hold off your uncoupled stablemate in Zandon or Tawnyport. It sounds like Western River is going to end up going in the Curlin on Friday. So this is going to be a 4-horse field. I think early voting is not only the pace setter, I think he's the best horse in the race. And I said it before, maybe I'm naive. I feel like he is still not getting the credit he deserves, even in Chad's own barn. Jack Christopher, we've answered the question. He doesn't want to go this far. But I still feel like people look at Zandon and think he's better. I think early voting is the best 3-year-old that Chad's got. I think with a forward move, he's a legitimate threat in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic. He's shown that he can win on the lead or just off of it. He's stalked fast fractions and still finished. I don't know. Early voting looks like the complete package to me.
It's not crazy. I think Joel, especially after, to my mind, getting the worst of it in every way, shape, or form in the Preakness, is going to be glued to his hip. And I think they'll run it like a match race. And I think he just might be subtly a little bit better. The Derby trip we've talked about, I certainly don't blame Joel. That was a very difficult decision in that hot pace, being down inside. I think he just, got beat by the miracle run of Rich Strike. And then I just think the Pimlico trip was just a debacle. He doesn't break. He then has to check again. And then Joel decides to navigate him down to the rail. Look, I wish he'd gone forward, but then the rail wasn't the place to be there for me on that Saturday. We've seen a lot of horses come back who ran on the rail at Pimlico that Saturday. They've run significantly better figure-wise. I just think Epicenter might be a little bit better horse and be able to, if he breaks, just sit in his hip. They ride it like a match, and I think he might hold the cards. We'll see. I certainly respect your opinion, and if he doesn't break or Joel gets cute and they let him do his own thing on the lead, he's certainly the other one I want. I think it's a hard spot, really hard spot for Tawnyport and Zandon. I'll say that much. I think it's one of those top two, and the winner will come down to how the tactics play out.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I think Zandon's a good horse. Mile and an eighth is his trip. I think he's going to be pace compromised, and I think he's running against two horses that, in my mind, are better than him. One of them just happens to be going after the same trainer.
I also think, to the same point, let's say he runs a big race against the flow, I can still see Zandon being my Travers pick, depending on how it all shakes out with the mile and a quarter. Oh my goodness, we have a violent storm ripping through here at the Brentwood, which probably means we're basically at the 7 furlong shoot. So there's probably a violent storm ripping through Saratoga right now. Just something like that.
The only other thing I would add, I will disagree. I wouldn't touch Zandon with a 10-foot pole at a mile and a quarter.
You just don't think he wants to go that far?
What's the excuse with the Kentucky Derby? He had every.
You're right. He's meant to go by Epicenter. He's meant to beat Epicenter.
Never mind not winning. You've got to finish second, and he didn't.
Right.
And
that's
unless,
a fair point.
I could be entirely wrong, but I think the Upstart came up and got him.
Yeah,
I think Upstart was a mile and a 16th, maybe mile and an eighth kind of horse. He's extremely talented. I just don't think he's a mile and a quarter type.
It's a completely reasonable opinion. Mine was more of a theoretical supposition that if he were to run well against the flow and if he has developed. But you're right. We do have empirical evidence that he doesn't want to go that far at this point. Let's pivot to the West Coast, Matt, and talk about the Bing Crosby Grade 1 action. Win and you're in action. We'll do that little gimmick where we reset here at the end and do a little 2-minute thing that maybe Breeders' Cup will send out on social. But this is a complicated enough race that I think we can do a more general discussion, and at the very end, we'll drill down for a minute or two as far as our final answers go. Give me your thoughts on this 10-runner field in general.
Fantastic race. There's no clear-cut standout in here. You can make a case, arguably, for the entire field in some fashion. I kind of looked at it and thought maybe this distance is a bit on the sharp side for him. But if you go back and watch the tape from that triple bend, I thought Principe Carlo did all the dirty work. He put away Brickyard Ride, and he just got nipped by American Theorem, who had the run of the race and just barely won the photo. I know this distance, he's only 1 for 7 at it. He's got a few runner-up finishes, but he likes Del Mar. I feel like if he runs that triple bend back, I think he wins. He can be forward enough that he's either on the lead or just off of it. And in a race that I would not take a short price on anyone because I just think it's that tough. I think it's that competitive. I'm going to go with Principe Carlo in here.
I like your confidence with that selection. I was a little bit interested in Bag Boss at the potential to move forward, trying Stakes Company for the first time. It is a big step up, but looked to me like one who could get the perfect stalk and pounce trip in this spot. What do you think of his chances?
Yeah, look, I thought he moved up very nicely last time out. He had paired up 90 buyers in the runs prior, moves up to a 94. The 9th and 11th place finishers were both next out winners with buyers of 91 and 85. So the form is holding up. And again, kind of the way you laid it out, he should work out a beautiful sort of stalking position, stalking trip, and be able to get the run. The question is he of this caliber? Again, this is a grade 1. I think probably in name only, probably closer to a grade 2 type of field. But boy, it's supremely competitive, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Brendan Walsh walks away with all the money.
The 3 and the 5, depending on which one of us you decide to listen to, in the Bing Crosby, a win and you're in race 4, the Breeders' Cup Sprint. While we're talking about Del Mar, let's move on to the San Diego, a race I know you have a lot of interest in talking about. 9 go to post in here. Who do you like to get the job done?
Yeah, fabulous race. I mean, you've got so many of the biggest names in here. You've got Mandaloon. You've got Country Grammar coming back off the lengthy layoff. You've got sort of the horses that need to prove they belong in this group, whether it's defunded or even a grade 1 winner like There Goes Harvard. This is probably the race I'm most looking forward to betting on Saturday. And no, the horse is not the likeliest winner by a long shot. Parnelli has paired up buyer tops of 93 in his last 2 starts. I think he's going to move forward here. He beat Extra Hope, who came back and earned a 90 in his next start. The 7th place finisher earned a 94 in his next start from a 77 earned in that optional claimer. The other thing with Parnelli is he dead heated with There Goes Harvard 2 starts back. There Goes Harvard then went on to win the Grade 1 Gold Cup out at Santa Anita, or the Hollywood Gold Cup, I guess technically it's called again. I think Parnelli is a prime example of a horse early on the connections thought highly of. They ran him in the Santa Anita Derby. They put blinkers on, draw a line through that race, draw a line through the synthetic race. Oh, as my camera goes out. Draw a line through the 2 turf starts. And I think you're looking at a horse that is very dirty and makes all the sense in the world at what should be at least 10 or 15 to 1. In a race where most of the competitors are prepping, I think Parnelli could steal this thing.
I love the case. It's very exciting. Much more interesting than me telling you that Country Grammar has the best form in the race. And I think Country Grammar, just based on the form that he's established and the figures that he's run, makes the most sense. But as you said it out loud, it resonated with me. Is there a potential that he's really just prepping a little bit short? He runs second, maybe to a longer price, like your Parnelli. What do you think about Country Grammar in here?
Yeah, I mean, I think Country Grammar is still one of the best horses as far as this division is concerned. I just feel like a mile and a 16th, this is nothing more than a means to an end to get ready for the mile and a quarter P Classic, where we'll get the showdown with Flightline. I don't know. I feel like this is nothing more than, get me to whatever the next spot is. Mandaloon, I'll tell you what, according to Timeform US, that Stephen Foster is going to be the race of all races as far as the Breeders' Cup Classic is concerned, because they have the top 5 horses in there running faster than anyone in this race is capable of. And if that's the case, I won't be surprised. But at the same time, I kind of want him to prove that he is of this caliber. And beyond that, I think there's a lot of other horses that need to prove that they actually can handle Del Mar. They can handle better company. There's so many different pieces in here. I just wanted to take a price.
Like the sound of it. Great stuff, Matt. Appreciate that. And if you're watching the late week show, we'll be back right after this. Today's show also brought to you by our friends, the Bet Makers. Fixed odds betting powered by Bet Makers is back and in effect at Monmouth Park. The early returns, as we've been telling you, they've been fantastic. 70% of winners paying more on fixed odds than they are on the tote. Love getting the opportunity to take advantage of the fixed odds betting last weekend. Even when my bet didn't work out on Jack Christopher, I still felt a little bit smart because I got the best of the number. And that's something. That's everything in the big picture, long term of life. Soon, fixed odds betting is going to be available throughout the state. How soon? Well, how soon is now? to quote the Smiths, because the Monmouth Bets app, Monmouth Park app, is now going on throughout the state. You can get involved with that. Go to the App Store and download the Monmouth Bets app. And you're going to be continuing to hear a lot more about that app and all kinds of fixed odds betting opportunities across the In the Money Media Network. Next up in the show, very happy to welcome back our man who talks about so many things on this network. We had a really enjoyable chat looking back at Haskell weekend and also what's been going on at Saratoga. You can check that out in the Money media feed. He's here today to talk about this Saturday's racing at Monmouth Park from both a potential win early pick 5 and also fixed odds betting perspective. He is Nick Tammaro. Nick, what's going on, my friend?
I'm doing great, Pete. We're in the thick of the summer action, so it's a lot of fun.
And we had some big news about New Jersey racing and fixed odds this week. Was hoping we'd get Dallas Baker to tell us more about it. I don't know. He's sleeping in. I don't know what's going on. He'll be here. He'll be here soon. Not on this show, but this Monmouth Bets app is now live. When you were down there, did you have a chance to check it out? Have you seen a beta version or anything? What are we expecting for this thing?
Yeah, it's going to definitely increase the exposure of the fixed odds offerings via the app that'll be available to New Jersey residents. They're going to be able to get down on fixed odds betting at a variety of racetracks beyond just Monmouth. So there's a contract signed with, I think, about a dozen at this point. That number is expected to expand as time goes by. And obviously, everyone who's interested in it will now have the opportunity to play fixed odds betting outside of just Monmouth. So very, very exciting, and appreciative of the state of New Jersey being a little bit more on the innovative and aggressive side when it comes to wagering options. And I know the folks at BetMakers are really excited about it. So I believe it's up and running, and I think it'll get even more popular as time goes by.
Go to the App Store, check it out, monmouthbets.com. We'll have a lot more information, not only about the app and how that works, but also about the additional content that's going to be on there. And obviously, extra betting content means lots more opportunities for us to provide coverage. So you've been hearing a lot about fixed odds. I think they're going to be hearing a lot more in the coming weeks and months as well, as this gets rocking and rolling. And then presumably there might be some bookmaker options as well, in addition to the house feed. It's going to be fun. What are you expecting to really happen in this next evolution for fixed odds betting in New Jersey?
Well, I'm looking forward to people understanding where fixed odds betting fits in the landscape. And there seems to be a big misunderstanding of that. It's always ironic that, horse players offer up a lot of suggestions about, and horse players are my people. Don't question it for a second, but offer up suggestions about, innovation and things that could make the product offerings better. And I think fixed odds definitely is one. I think there's been way too much conversation and concern about limiting winning players. Now, obviously, that's something that will develop over time. But I do think in the short term, what we'll see is that it's going to break down a barrier to entry for a potential group of new players that are familiar with the fixed odds, a decimal offering. And I think that is always a good thing. Anything that's going to make it easier to get into the pools is a good thing. How it will affect the rank and file, the day-to-day players, I think we won't see terribly much of that right away. It'll evolve over time. I think we have to have the offerings there. Obviously, the sharper players are going to want to see what the prices are like and where there might be some value versus what they can do on the tote. So I think and you and I were there in Tucson back in December when a conversation took place about fixed odds cannibalizing the tote. I think that's something that might end up happening in the long run. In the short run, I think it's just going to be another option for a sharp punter that wants an opportunity to get involved in a pool where they can exploit what they think is a price advantage. And bottom line, as long as they're able to do that at a decent amount of money, that's a good thing.
I think it's going to be additive, honestly. I think some of the tote declines you saw in a place like Australia were where they were doing fixed odds for exotic betting as well as win betting. And if you look at the bigger economic picture, I think that the fans that come in and the new customers who are created are going to far outweigh the loss that you might see in the win, place, and show pools at places that have fixed odds. But even there, I could see a world in which, especially if it's win pool betting done right, like there is in New York right now, that it just continues to be another option, another place to shop for prices. Obviously, we'll see how it plays out. We'll be looking very, very carefully at the data, but it's my firm belief that this is a massive net positive for the industry. And I'm not just saying that because they're clients. I believe this and was saying these kind of things about fixed odds betting long before we had a business relationship with bet makers. Let's dive into these races on Saturday, though, Nick, starting with our very first race. 12:15 is the post time, and this is the nation's first pick 5, this win early pick 5 at Monmouth. We kick things off with maiden special weights going 1.70 miles on the dirt. I don't know if you have the final fixed odds yet, or I'm curious to know what you know in terms of what the fixed odds market's going to put up for these, and very curious what numbers will be on your win early pick 5 ticket as well.
Yeah, I have a very close list. So we're gonna be looking at Loose Goose being a slight favorite here over Triple Elvis and Crack the Code. It's sort of funny that Todd Pletcher and Chad Brown enter Friday's Saratoga card tied in the standings, and here they're going to do battle at Monmouth with a couple of horses that they've sent down to AAA, and both looking for opportunities to clear the maiden ranks, having been a little disappointing at some point in their career. Loose Goose actually ran at Monmouth last time out, finished a good second. Triple Elvis comes back second off a layoff, dropping in class, so to speak. I know going from maiden special to maiden special, but no doubt the Belmont editions of those races quite a bit tougher. It looks like one of those two should probably get the job done. I maybe favored Triple Elvis slightly from a handicapping standpoint. I think you're probably going to be around $3 on him decimal for the fixed odds market. Crack the Code will probably be in the neighborhood of $5 or roughly, and I think you'll see a little bit of support for Strasbourg, probably in that $6 range as well. But definitely the expectation is one of these two from the Pletcher or Brown barns get it done.
All right, I'm going to list your ideas as far as the pick 5 goes as 6-4 in here. And with that, we'll pivot to the back end of the early double, the second leg of the win early pick 5. We've got maiden claimers at the $40,000 level going 6 furlongs on the dirt. Field of 7 going postward, and looking at the morning line, at least it looks a little competitive at the top of the market. How do you predict the fixed odds numbers are going to go up?
Yeah, I think much like the morning line, we're going to see favoritism likely split between Deep Faith, the 1, and Amity Road, the 6, probably each in the neighborhood of $2.50, $3, that range. I think with the market shifting it maybe just a tad at the end of the day. I think the horse that'll be interesting from a fixed odds perspective will be My Gal Val, who is now in the care of Louis Linder after a couple of starts in New York for George Weaver. Definitely faced tougher competition. Interesting thing, of course, about this horse is that he's got some speed. So that's always something you want to keep in mind when you're dealing with a place like Monmouth. The two favorites of the two of them, Deep Faith, definitely a lot quicker early. I think there's an expectation that he'll be somewhat forwardly placed. Did run an improved race last time for 25, now back up to 40. Same as the case with Amity Road. And so you have these lower level maiden claiming types now jumping up and facing, I think, what is probably a field with a little bit more depth than they did last time out. Another one that'll get some action, I think, on the fixed odds market will be Jet Speed. You're going to be looking at about $5 on him, new to the care of Michelle Hemingway, who quietly has had success in New Jersey and New York both over the last couple of months. This one shows up as a new gelding. He's where I landed. I don't love the layoff, but from a handicapping perspective, this felt like an interesting horse, and there was enough going on with the favorites to lead me there. So from a pick 5 perspective, I would get bullish and loan a Jet Speed and try and back up with the 1, 4, and 6 and create a little bit of value there.
I like the sound of that. 5 with 1, 4, 6 for Nick in this one, and we'll see how that plays out on Saturday. Let's move on to race number 3, the hinge of this early pick 5. We've got an allowance race, 3 and up fillies and mares going 5.5 on the turf, and a field of 10 signed on in this one. Where did you go?
Yeah, I think it's a 3-horse race from a pick 5 standpoint. I'm going to use the 2, 6, and 10, and that's it. I think Insatiable is the horse to beat, coming in out of the Blue Sparkler, facing Elders again, which she did on debut when she was victorious. She stumbled and lost jockey Isaac Castillo 2 starts back. That was the race in which he was injured, and he's been out since then, hopefully back soon enough. But this filly's run 2 very good races, and races that she actually finished. And I think she's going to get enough pace to run out in the late stages. The interesting horse from a trip perspective is the 16 Drama, who was in position going around the turn last time out and then ended up getting into some pretty serious traffic trouble. That really cost her a lot. And if she gets back to her debut effort, I think she's got a big shot to make noise in here at what should be a relatively attractive price. From a fixed odds perspective, we're probably looking at about $4, maybe somewhere between $4 and $5 when all is said and done. And then you have the New York bred Silky Blue, who's coming to New Jersey for trainer Jorge Duarte Jr., who, of course, is based in the Garden State. This one's been knocking heads with much tougher competition in New York, including an open one other than field last time out at 6 panels at Belmont. That's just a much tougher race than this one. The recent Bullet workout 10 days ago, I think, really signals her readiness.
And in terms of order of preference for the 2, 6, and 10, is it in that order, or would you juggle them a bit?
I'd probably say 2, 10, 6 in that order, but I would definitely want to use each of them equally.
When you mentioned the 2 runners' merits, Insatiable, you mentioned the race, the Blue Sparkler, which made me chuckle because when we were at Monmouth last week, had the family in tow, and Perrin noticed on the wall they have a New Jersey bred Hall of Fame or a New Jersey Racing Hall of Fame, and Blue Sparkler was in it. And for some reason, Perrin was fascinated and was like, he asked me for days after, like, tell me more about Blue Sparkler. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that poking around on Equibase, I found an old PP cut. It didn't have every race, but Blue Sparkler was a heck of a race mare back in the 1950s. Won all manner of stuff, and I don't know. I may see if I can get a Blue Sparkler print now for Perrin as part of my overall mission to indoctrinate her into being a horse racing fan. Which, by the way, you helped with the other day. Our method. I was scrambling. There wasn't a lot of handicapping going on. So our method was Perrin would look at the names. If nothing leapt out at her, I would read her your 3 selections from Saratoga over at inthemoneypodcast.com. And one of them, and this is terrible that I remember. One of them, a cool name, interesting little pedigree, was number 7 in a maiden race the other day, Miracle, who Perrin decided she would put her $10 to win on. And yeah, there's going to be... Yeah, a whole bunch of new Squishmallow stuffed animals, Nick. I'm going to try to get her to name one after you.
I like it. Miracle was a good good result for anybody who backed it, no question about it. I could have used the second horse a little bit more personally, but Miracle was all right.
Let's talk about race number 4 at Monmouth. We've got maiden special weights going 5.5 on the dirt and a field of 7 going postward. The morning line has Frosted Faith as a heavy favorite, even money. What's going on with the fixed odds with Frosted Faith? That big of a favorite as well?
Yeah, he's probably going to be around $1.80 or so, which is going to be, in the neighborhood of where Jack Christopher was closing price, and the Haskell heavy favorite expected to win for trainer Anthony Margata Jr. coming back off a layoff. This is just one of those situations where on paper he really lays over the field. I think the 6 Golden Wildcat's going to get a little bit of action in the fixed odds market, starting at about $6 or $7. Not a bad effort on debut at Parks, now drawn favorably on the outside to maybe stalk and pounce, but all eyes are going to be on Frosted Faith, who's expected to win this race. And if he can bring that good form that he had down in Florida up to New Jersey, I think he'll be very, very tough to handle. One other horse I would use as a backup in the pick 5 is the 3, Our Pride and Joy, who is going to go off a significantly shorter price than he did last time out, when second at 52-1. But there was undoubtedly big improvement in him first time with Lasix. First off, a long layoff for trainer Ramon Martin. Probably want to use him as a backup, but I think Frosted Faith is a likely winner. I'll use the 3 and 6 as backups.
We're going to do one more race on the show in the Monmouth segment. It's the Tyro going 5 furlongs on the turf, 2-year-old stakes action, $100,000 in the pot here at a field of 7 going to post. As far as the win early pick 5 goes, Nick, how are we going to get paid?
Interesting thing about the win early pick 5 is that I think this is a contentious field. And so I'm inclined to use the 1, 2, and 6 in the pick 5 and probably end up backing up with the 4 and 5. From a fixed odds perspective, I think we're going to see favoritism likely drift towards Sharp as Attack, probably around $2.50, somewhere in that range. There's always going to be an upgrade for a horse that broke its maiden at a place like Santa Anita. When you're talking about Monmouth, this horse also gets Lasix for the first time, being that Monmouth doesn't have any restrictions on using Lasix in stakes races. So there's a lot to like. And I think the fact that Doug O'Neill is willing to put this one on the road is probably more of a positive sign than anything. There are more opportunities for a turf sprinting 2-year-old who already has a win in the on the eastern side of the country than at Del Mar. So a Sharp as Attack obviously has plenty of merits. Jeremy's Jet won a race, and I've actually already inquired with the DRF. That was not an open maiden special weight race. So there should be a restricted designation that's going to be added to this horse's PPs at some point, because that was one of the maiden auction RNA races where you had to be you had to have gone for less than 50,000 or less or RNA in order to get it. But he was very impressive. And I think that's an effort that you want to take seriously. There's turf pedigree on the dam side. Power Attack also got a bunch of money when he went up to New York to race against New York breds sprinting on the turf at Belmont. So plenty of reason to think that he is dangerous as well. So I thought it was a fun race. I think there's a lot of interesting things going on. Dangerous Ride goes out for a particularly dangerous barn. Also gets Lasix as well. Not a ton of turf pedigree here, and that was why I was a little bit hesitant. But I think we'll end up seeing a fixed odds favorite just bouncing back and forth in that neighborhood of $2.70 or so on Sharp as Attack. I think there'll be some support for both Power Attack and Jeremy's Jet as well. I'm going to try and close out the win early pick 5 with the 1, 2, and 6 and back up with the 4 and 5.
Great stuff, Nick. Appreciate your time and efforts. Remind folks to check out this new app, Monmouth Bets. Go to the App Store and check it out. I said Monmouth Bets. It's Monmouth Park Bets, isn't it? The new betting app, it just launched, and we're going to have a lot more information about it when we get Dallas on with us next week. But yeah, the next evolution in fixed odds betting, it's moving out of its embryonic Monmouth at Monmouth only stages, and there's going to be a whole lot more to report in the coming weeks. Thank you for your time, Nick.
Thanks a lot, Pete. Good luck, everybody.
3, 2, 1. Today's show brought to you in part by our friends from Woodbine. So happy to be working with Woodbine again this year. The Queen's Plate countdown is on. That race scheduled for August 21st, and lots of good stakes action before that. Bunch of stuff going on August 6th and August 7th at Woodbine, including the Ontario Colleen Stakes, the Georgia Bay Stakes, the Lake Huron Stakes. We'll be covering it all here on the In the Money Media Network. And I hope you enjoy this upcoming segment presented by our friends at Woodbine.com. Next up in the show, happy to bring in our man to speak with when it comes to all things related to Woodbine from InTheMoneyPodcast.com. He is Drew Coatney. Drew, what's going on?
Oh, I'm doing good. How are you today?
Doing very well. Excited about a big weekend of racing, and that includes some action north of the border up in Toronto. We had some great action last week when it comes to prep stuff for the Queen's Plate. How impressed were you with Moira in that race?
Oh, man. I couldn't have been more wrong about Moira. She really showed up and left nothing to question amongst that bunch. She's going to be great. What were your thoughts?
I was very impressed. Looks like the potential favorite for the Queen's Plate. Maybe we'll try to do a segment with some of our friends up there, as we've done in past years, where we do like a way too early look at the Queen's Plate and see who the key contenders are. But for me, Moira is probably right there, number one on top of the list at this point.
Yeah. No, that'd be awesome. That'd be great. That'd be a must listen.
We have Woodbine action continuing this weekend. We're going to talk about the last 4 races on the card on Saturday, kicking off with race number 7, where we have a starter allowance for 3 and up fillies and mares going a mile on the inner turf. Who did you come up with in here, Drew?
Yeah, nothing too creative. I think Bellanina will get the best of trips. Stalking and pressing and should tip out. I think the previous second off the layoff successes have proven pretty useful for this horse here. So overall figures, nothing too creative for this one. But the 2 other interesting horses are the number 4 Endorphin Rush at 12-1. I use as a backup. I think ran a sneaky good race closing into those very slow factions at the sprint distance going 6 furlongs. And getting back into the 8 furlongs will help get this horse right back into a presser spot with upside left as a 4-year-old. So the number 4 Endorphin Rush, I don't think we can go wrong at 12-1, probably drifting up. And then the number 5 Anne of Cleves, Ron Gearking's horse. I think this is a great closer that could fit quite well around this distance. And I don't love that there isn't a ton of speed, but I think that price is going to hang around 8-1. And if things unravel a little bit, the number 5 Anne of Cleves will be there. So single A on the number 3, and then 2 backups with the 4 and the 5.
I believe Bellanina is the number 2, no?
I could be wrong. Maybe it's – oh, yes. I'm sorry. I do have that wrong. So
double check.
Yep. A
2, 4, and 5 for Drew, and I'm with you on Bellanina. One of the great no-shot trips of the meet on seasonal debut back on July 3rd. Didn't get away great, carried wide throughout, trying to close into a slow pace. Surely going to come on for that run and fits just super well on the previous races. I was all about the 2. Drew with the idea to back up with the 4 and the 5 in race number 7. We'll move on to the feature. We've got the Niagara Stakes going 1.25 miles on the turf with 100,000 in the pot. Some big names in here, including the one-eyed wonder, Mighty Heart. But I'll tell you what, every horse at the lower end of the odds spectrum, for one reason or another, I don't trust. Town Cruise, another one who should certainly be name-checked talking about this race, being the Woodbine Mile winner. Frosted Over has the numbers. British Royalty, an old favorite of the show. Every single one of those runners, I have one type of question or another about. For me, British Royalty, even with all the speed signed on, apparently, I still think this might be too sharp. I went with number 9, Who's the Star. Maybe can be ready for a star turn with a big run in this featured stake. I love the angle of a runner that improves significantly on a new surface. That's what Who's the Star did last time. And he did so over the same course and distance with what I thought was probably a suboptimal setup, trying to close into blue fractions. Who's the Star for me in the Niagara? How do you see it, Drew Coatney?
Yeah, I like your idea here. I am with you that a lot of the shorter odds, there's a lot of question marks. There's going to be a lot of speed into this race. And I'm going with another creative angle with the number 2 Collective Force. For the value we're going to see on this runner, it's going to be my top choice. We get Gallardo for the first time, and he needs to rate out of the speed in this race and stick to the rail. That could be a winning recipe for this 4-year-old who I believe still has some great upside left and a really muddy form for this year so far. If we're right about this, we're going to get paid because this horse is going to pay easily over 30-1. I think that odds are going to drift up. Getting to the more logicals, I really like the number 1, Like the King as well. If you can't tell, I'm on a theme of finding pressers or stalkers to close into this pace that I think is going to unfold. And it's another horse who's going to get that exact trip in the overall class of always hitting the board, except for those last 2 races where this horse was outclassed completely. So getting back into this ranks, I think the number 1, Like the King at 12-1 is really interesting. And I'll use as a backup the number 4, Sibolian. Cross entered at Saratoga. So we'll see where this horse goes. Probably someone out there knows exactly where this horse is barred today and can answer this question for us. But I think there's just decent backlash and closing into those neutral or slow fractions. And today's distance will help work out that trip better. So the 2 and the 1 on the A line and the 4 is a backup for me. We're getting creative in this race. I think it's going to be bombs away.
We'll see. And of course, now that we both have that approach, it could end up being chalk, but we'll take that chance and we'll see if we can't be right and get some prices home in the Niagara, which will lead us to the back half of the 4 races we're talking about today. Next up, we've got Maiden, special weight, 6 furlongs on the synthetic for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up, and a field of 8 going postward. Going to have a big favorite here, according to the morning line, in Menagerie at 6-5. Are you with or against?
I'm against Menagerie. I just can't see how this horse keeps losing with the figures this one has. And there's some others that get me interested if we just look past the surface and say maybe there's still upside left. And that's how I'm going to play this race. If Menagerie wins, I lose. No big deal. But I think we're going to get great value elsewhere because my bet is the betting public is going to be really hammering Menagerie. So into the picks we go, the top choice would be the number 2, the Hard Way. In these type of races, speed sometimes can be deadly. We get blinkers coming on. 4-year-old is going to grab and send the rail and could continue to improve. I think it is significant the last race was over the 6.5 and cuts back to the flat 6. Dead send and go could be an interesting one here. And then just 2 other backups I'm going to use is the Fire Emoji, the number 8 at 10-1. It's had some newfound speed, second off, dropping class. And there's only really one way for that one to go, and it's speed. And then the number 6 Roadmap at 5-1, I think ran well enough second off the bench with Fire Emoji in that race, but maybe this lighter bunch will help set up this one for a win. So the 2 as an A, and then the 8-6 is a B for me, but a wide open betting race in my opinion.
I have the same horse as you. I like the Hard Way, the number 2 runner, quite a bit. Inside part of the track was good, according to Ron Gierkink back on June 10th. Does such a great job analyzing the Woodbine races in the daily racing form. And is obviously, as we mentioned, with him having a horse in the car today, involved in the industry in other ways. Hopefully we'll get him back on one of these shows too. But yeah, a little bit of a bias upgrade for the Hard Way coming out of that. Worked twice since, and I thought just fits well. It has slower numbers than some of these others, but does, I agree with you, project to get the lead. I don't know, maybe if we're both coming up with the same 10-1 shot, we're not likely to be 10-1, but I think a lot of money is going to land on the 3 Menagerie and also on the 4 Hecla's Aura. I was going to mix them in with the hard way in exactas. I'll take another look at your longer shots as well, the 6 and the 8. I'm going to end up keying the hard way in exactas here. Might be my favorite play of the day. I'll ask you yours when we get through the 4th of the races we're going to talk about on the show, which is our nightcap, where we've got $15,000 claimers going a mile on the inner turf for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. We are deciding to play the pick 4, Drew, another way to approach the 4 races we're talking about on the show. How are we going to get paid?
Yeah, it's simple for me. Number 5, Princess Helene at 2-1. Overall best figures, hasn't drawn within the 8 posts in the last 2 races, being forced to go wide in the last start. And I think this one's just going to lay over the field. The 2-1 morning line, I imagine we're going to get odds on for the price on this runner. So cold single for me, number 5, nothing too creative.
You and I are the same in 3 of the 4 races today. I thought Princess Helene moved wide and maybe a hair early in that fast-paced race. I'm hoping she can bide her time this time around and strike in this spot where there looks to be ample speed. I hope you're wrong about odds on. That would be a little too short, I think, for me in this spot. But at anything, 8-5, 9-5, 2-1, I would be very happy making that a confident win bet. And maybe I will single some pick 4s with her on the end. Of the 4 races we spoke about, which one would you be most willing to make sort of your play of the day?
Yeah, I think it's I'm torn between race 10 and the number 5 Princess Helene, which I think we're going to get such little value on. I'm going to go to race 7 in the handicap on that 8 furlongs over the turf. I'm going to look at the prices of the number 2 and the number 4, Bellanina and Endorphin Rush, and play those 2 and maybe a Dutch win combination so that we can work out a 2-1 will pay, maybe a 3-2 will pay. If either of those horses win, we'll get paid 3-2. So most likely, if we had $100 bet, we'd probably have $70 or $80 going through Bellanina and maybe $20 going through Endorphin Rush to get to that 3-2 probable. But we'll see how the prices play out. If it gets too short, we'll probably avoid it. But that's where I'm at for the best bet, race 7.
And in terms of head-to-head, there's only one choice, the rare day where we're the same pick and long shots too, well, mostly in 3 of the 4 races. So we've got to go with the stakes. Will you give me my Who's the Star against your collective force, or do you want me to throw another one in there for you?
Let's just do Like the King versus your number 9.
Okay. Both 10-1s on the morning line, both Mark Cassie runners. I like that. We'll see how it plays out in the Niagara. Looking forward to betting Woodbine on Saturday. Drew, thank you so much for your time. We worked together to come up with a good time to do this week, and we'll do it again next week. What do you think?
Cheers. Love it. Let's actually, no, next week I think I might be off. We got some golf going on Thursday and Friday, so I may have to skip. So
all right, fair enough. We'll find an able substitute for you, and we'll talk. I think I'll have done some other interesting cooking projects in the interim. We can yap about that the next time you're on, whenever that may be.
Fantastic. Thank you. Cheers.
Next up on the show, This is a guest I have been very excited to have on in the past and thrilled to have him here. A little bit of a different role this time. He's been on to talk about his books in the past, including the classic Kinky Handicapping, including the newly reissued Please Hold All Tickets. I encourage everybody to go back and find the interview we did several months ago about that book. That was a fun conversation, but this is a whole different deal now. We're making him pick some horses today. He is legendary handicapping author and all-around good dude, Mark Cramer. Mark, what's up?
Yeah. Now, Pete, remember that I did pick for you "Love's Only You" and for the Breeders' Cup.
Right. So you were on the Breeders' Cup.
I'm still around. I'm still picking horses.
Yeah, that's right. That was a fantastic selection. You were well on to the Japanese threat at the Breeders' Cup before most other people. And I threatened at the time to have you come on here and be our French racing correspondent, which I have not been good about keeping up with. But, hey, you're here to talk about this pick 6, and that should be good. Hey, before we dive into that, though, tell us a little bit more about how the promo plan's been going with the book. Please Hold All Tickets recently reissued. Are you happy with the way things are trucking along? Have you been doing some other book publicity?
Yeah. Well, in fact, since I've been here bicycling most of the time, I haven't had a chance to do the publicity I'd like to do. But evidently, a video here and an interview there. The book is hanging in there quite well, and I'm pleased because there are good stories here that will revive your thrill of racing.
I buy that. And I'll also say this, no matter what, with all kinds of horse players, we've been talking about this on the show a lot lately, about different horse players have different intents to go to the races for different reasons. No matter what type of horse player you are, I think it's safe to say that you're going to recognize yourself in some of those characters in this amazing retelling of the Don Quixote story in Please Hold All Tickets. You stand by that statement? You think that's right?
Absolutely. We used to have a class called Probability Theory and Horse Race Handicapping in Los Angeles City College, and we have some of the greatest handicappers visit us. I was the guy who organized the class, but I didn't present myself as the expert. We had a lot of guests like Barry Meadow, James Quinn, but I got to know so many handicappers and so much handicapping psychology that, man, I felt like going back to university and studying psychology to get a degree in horse player psychology. I couldn't find any university that offered the degree.
We'll have to
so I wrote the book instead.
That's great. That's great. Let's talk about these races at Saratoga on this Saturday. Actually, one more tangent before we do that, because I know you have, and this will come as zero surprise to anybody who's read your fantastic work over the years, but you have a little bit of a different way of looking at things. And some of it has to do with looking at these races through the lens of human connections. And I know you had some information you wanted to share.
Well, when a shorter meet begins or a classic meet begins, I usually prepare by doing long shot jockey standings and long shot trainer standings, beginning with the very first day of the meet. And usually patterns start to emerge from the get-go as to which jockeys are going to win at 5-1 or up and which trainers are going to win at 5-1 or up. And I'd like to share this with you because I had one discovery. Castellano, his 2 long shot wins at the time I did the statistics were both at the 5.5 furlong sprint turf, which is specialty distance. And lo and behold, yesterday he hits another one for 38.40. So he's got 3 long shots. Castellano has 3 long shots in my standings, all of them on this one 5.5 turf. So
that's so interesting because we think of it as a specialist distance for horses. That's a fascinating idea that it could be a specialty distance for a jockey. Has he shown have they been all the same? Have they been all, wire to wire or all deep closers? Is there anything else that sort of unites those wins, or maybe he just has more of a general feel for the course?
No, there are 3 different trainers, in fact. And I think that it's just a question of you have to have a good sense of timing. The athletic part of riding that distance, I think, is more important. Now, there's another jockey that also does well at that distance on the turf, which is Franco. 2 of his 3 long shots were both on the turf, 5.5 furlongs. And the other long shot win that Franco had was also a sprint. It was on the dirt. So it looks like Franco is going to be good with long shots at the shorter distances. And the way the standings have come out so far, the guy that I predicted was going to be under the radar, even though he won the jockey title last year, is Sias. And lo and behold, I told you right from the get-go on him. And now he's leading the long shot jockey standings with 6, and 5 of those are on the turf, by the way, turf routes. The next 2 closest competitors are Jay Ortiz and Rosario with 4. And then you have Franco and Pratt just got his 4th too. And then you have Franco and Castellano with 3. So, and in the trainers, right from the get-go, Michael Maker started out and he's leading the long shot trainer standings with 4. Now this is prior to Friday's results, okay? Michael Maker has 4. The next is Chad Brown with 3. And then we have 5 guys with 2. Cassie Engelhart, the C. Engelhart, Pletcher, which is both on the turf, both of his long shots on the turf. Joe Sharp, which gives more a value to Michael Maker, because Joe Sharp was the assistant of Michael Maker, if I recall correctly, and Schettino, both of whose wins are on the turf. So this gives me a chance, especially if you're doing a pick six and preparing for today, is that if you want to go deep in a race and you may not really like a horse, a lot of times pick six, the problem is you have these maybe horses that you don't hate and you don't like. And if you throw them in, it's going to cost me an extra couple of $100 or something. What do you do? But at least this gives a way where you can throw in a horse that you may not love, but it has a trainer stat.
A lot of times that's how I love to use trainer statistics and ideas like this. You don't like to get beat in a spread race. You have those 3 races in a pick six, say, where you have an opinion and you want to get it narrowed down. If you have in that spread race a reason to throw in a long shot, that can sometimes be the way to unlock a major score. So we appreciate that. And I think it's a great point about Saez. I mean, yeah, the way the jockey colony has evolved, where it seems like pari-mutually speaking, the IRAD fan club has never been out in more full force. And then the arrival of Pratt on the scene as well. Maybe he's getting lost a little bit, and he is someplace to look to find value. And you're getting value on a brand name, which isn't something you can always say in horse racing. So I think it's a valid point. Glad you brought it up. And now very curious to turn to some specifics, starting with the first leg of this pick six on Saturday's card. Race number 6, we've got 3 and up fillies and mares in an allowance race going 1 1/16 miles on the inner turf. Mark, how do you want to light this candle?
Well, look, I try to not use proven losers at the level, following James Quinn's advice. And I came up with one horse here who is not a proven loser and actually won at the track, and that is Blissful with Saez by coincidence. 9-2 on the morning line. Sherry DeVoe is the trainer. She has a real good statistic. And this horse actually won as a first-time starter at Saratoga on the turf. So he's coming back as his 3rd career race. And I think it's a lightly raced horse. I like him. And then there's a long shot here that is a possibility. Only the Missy Greer, the 2-horse. I just brought this horse to my attention because the combination of Kargan and Carmouche had a long shot win earlier in this meet. And this horse likes the turf. They had a long shot turf winner. So, it's the type of horse that I didn't really like that much, but I'm not going to throw away.
At 12-1, you can't really go too wrong. And coming out of Stakes Company, getting back on the grass, a surface where she had some success. I can hear where you're going with that. I was going to go with a horse. I don't think we can quite call the 9 Ensemble a proven loser yet. And I just think that the Ensemble's probably a little bit better than it looks based on that first run. Thought that it was reasonable to assume that maybe she was a bit short off the long layoff. And I thought she was at a tactical disadvantage there against a loose leader. Looking at the work tab, appears to have worked forwardly since. And I think she's going to be flying late on. I went with the 9 Ensemble, and I definitely respect your ideas as runners to try to put in there with her. And then the obvious form and figure horses who maybe will deserve to get a call as well are the number 1 and 3. I was going to have them on some backup lines additionally, but my main opinion in race number 6 is number 9 Ensemble. And with that, we'll move on to the second leg of this pick 6, unless you had a further thought on that one, Mark.
Well, Marvelous Maud, sometimes you form prejudices when you're reading a racing form. And Marvelous Maud reminded me of Marvelous Marv Throneberry of the infamous New York Mets.
With the iron glove. And then legendary in the beer commercials too.
Right. And so maybe I was prejudiced against Marvelous Maud because of that. But let's go on to the next race. Good idea.
Any excuse to talk about the Mets after a nice week getting 2 wins against the Yankees. I'll never turn down the opportunity to crow about that. Let's talk about this 7th race where we've got 3 and up New York bred maiden special weights going 5.5 on the turf and a full field signed on. I thought that Haymacket's Jack, the 2-runner, looks like one who might be better suited to this sharper 5-furlong turf sprint configuration up north than that more galloping 6 or 7 furlong turf sprint configuration down south. Thought this horse ran pretty well last time before maybe a combination of a slightly early move and the distance just got to him a bit. I think he can get the elusive maiden win in this spot. Not one that I want to stand alone with. And I thought there was an interesting potential long shot. Speaking of your man, Luis Saez, in number 9, ripe for mischief in this spot. This horse might have been a little short of fitness as well last time. And who knows, this could have been the plan all along for connections in the Bond Barn. We know target this Saratoga meet. Maybe it was get the leg stretcher down there and then, bring in the man Saez to try to get the win up here. I liked it 2-9 in race number 7. How did you see it, my friend?
Well, as far as the 9 is concerned, at 12-1, this horse showed a pattern which my people in the handicapping class used to love, which is showed early speed for the first time.
Yep.
I learned that from them, and at huge odds, and with a rider who's not our best common denominator in a meet like this, and then suddenly it has the big rider shift, shortens up, and Bond, Saez have had one long shot winner together, and but I especially like this. Before even looking at the trainer or the jockey, I like the way the horse suddenly had woke up after not being. It's a woke horse. It's woke betting, we call it. But and then the other horse that I just looked long at because it's Castellano and it's on the 5.5 furlong turf is the 1 horse. Boy, I tried to find something good about his pedigree and I couldn't find it. But I checked the Racing Post, I checked everything. But the shorter distance, he might survive because he got caught at a half furlong longer, and he might just survive there with the jockey he has.
And I'm not as worried about the turf pedigree stuff when you've got proven form. I mean, in Freud, we know the Freud City Zip Cross, sort of a classic modern New York grassbred cross. I think you'd be all right there. Just a question of if Built to Last is good enough to get the job done for Tom Morley and Castellano. Certainly connections you want to be giving an extra look, I would think, to up here at Saratoga. So a couple interesting ideas from Mark there in race number 7. And with that, we'll go to grade 1 action in the Vanderbilt. Jackie's Warrior, a legit 1-5 shot. When it comes to this pick 6, I'm not going to spend any money opposing. If he doesn't win, I won't win. Do you like Jackie's Warrior in here, or do you think there's an opportunity to get creative?
Look, sometimes creative people have a problem that they force creativity where it shouldn't be existing. And I tried to force an argument on the 3-horse NY Traffic or New York Traffic by drawing a line through all the horses' route races. And he is 3 for 4 with Irad, who hasn't had a long shot winner yet. And he beat a horse I think it was in Pennsylvania, who came back to win in Maryland. Barron, I think the name of the horse was. And so that race might be better than it looked. So if some people say, well, everybody's going to have Jackie's Warrior and that makes it a pick 5, if somebody wants to take a stab on a secondary ticket, that would be the horse that I would put in there, the 3. But Jackie's Warrior just looks like an absolute standout here.
Absolutely. But that's a clever idea on New York Traffic, and a horse to maybe round out the exacta if nothing else. And like you said, to have a few backup lines on. I'm going to go ahead in my notes and just list as your top pick at the value, making it very clear you respect Jackie's Warrior as well. Does that work?
Yeah, I really am in awe of Jackie's Warrior. It's more than just respect.
I love that. Let's talk about the Jim Dandy grade 2 action, this key prep for the Travers, and an interesting race in its own right. Epicenter making his return to the races, along with early voting, the reopposing top two from the Preakness. I give a little edge to Epicenter, who I keep saying in interviews has the dubious distinction, in my view, of having been best in the Derby and the Preakness without winning either one. I think he probably needed the freshening he got. I think he's going to come back. I love that Rosario's keeping them out. After the post-race interview on Preakness Day with Steve Asmussen, didn't sound all that likely that Rosario would be keeping them out, but I'm glad cooler heads have prevailed. I think he's going to be aggressive with Epicenter this time around. I think he's going to sit off early voting's hip, and I think he might just have too much for him in the lane, Mark. I'm all about Epicenter while still obviously respecting these two Chad Brown runners in early voting and Zandon. How do you see it, though?
Well, it's a 5-horse field, and I think the only value I see here is to exclude the number 5 Zandon as not getting up on time, because the pace is thoroughly controlled by early voting, and Epicenter thoroughly controls the presser position. So I would tend to want to use both of those two. I agree that Epicenter looks a tad better than early voting, but early voting gets loose as a lone front runner. Epicenter, something has happened with Epicenter that little by little he's losing speed. He was a front runner, then he was a presser, then he was a closer. And I don't know if this was by design or if there's something going on in the head of this horse that we don't know about. If that happened tomorrow, or for the Jim Dandy, then that would give early voting an especially good chance to walk away with it. So I couldn't throw out early voting here.
You raise a legitimate concern. I think it's circumstantial. I think tactically in the Derby, with all that speed, Rosario quite correctly didn't want his horse to get caught up in it. So I think that was by design. Then I think in the Preakness, I think the plan was to go forward. He just broke a little flat-footed, and then he had that bad check early. And I think Rosario was down to plan C or D when it came time to make the decision to bring him to the rail, which didn't seem like a great place on Preakness Day either. And he still made that huge run, especially after being criticized rather harshly by the trainer. I'd be very, very surprised if he doesn't show that early speed. And maybe he was going off form, and that's why he broke a little bit flat-footed at Pimlico. But he's had time, and he appears to be working well. I think we're going to see the good Epicenter on Saturday. But I agree with you. In a perfect world, just like in the Preakness, I say if with early voting, I'll probably be doing it a little bit again here. And I'm with you. Love Zandon, but I also think he is probably, of those three, the one who's the most prepping for the Travers as Chad Brown attempts to win his first Travers Stakes, one of the few that he hasn't gotten the win in. We'll see. He's going to go there with a strong hand, I bet, with these two horses, especially if they do what they're supposed to do in this prep. But I think Epicenter is going to take an awful lot of beating. Let's move on to race number 10. We've got an allowance race on the grass going 1 mile and 1/16 on the turf. Big favorite, I think, going to be in here, Mark, in the form of the 12 runner for Todd Pletcher in Capensis. Were you with or against this horse?
This horse is lightly raced, which is perfect for the conditions. There are a bunch of proven losers here. Jay Ortiz is doing quite well with everything he gets on, and this is a classic type of horse that fits the condition book. However, I do have two other horses here. I have the 8 because Ricochet is 2 for 3 on the turf at this distance, and the Michael Maker Saez combination 12 to 1. That sounds like really good odds. And I also have the 3 Orchestration, who may want a longer distance, but he did win at Saratoga on the grass. And so I could not throw out Orchestration either.
I feel like I'd be accused of a host fail if I didn't ask you about number 10, Coliseo, who brings Group 1 French form to the party. Obviously, you didn't mention among your top picks. I know the Catalano yard doesn't have the best record with first-time imports. I was going to put the 12 on top, but I was going to look to save with the 10 in this spot. But I'll defer to you on what you think of Coliseo and how those French form lines stack up.
Well, the horse is getting Lasix, does have Rosario. However, halfway back in his career, they had a lot of hopes for this horse, class-wise, and he didn't fulfill. Then they pretty much gave up on him by sending him to race at Nantes, which is a second or third class track where he did win his last race. 6-1, I think the odds are too low on this horse. I don't think Catalano is the type of trainer that is going to that has credentials for bringing a horse from a second level track in France to win here.
Am I correct, though, that a replication of his best form would bury this field, just in terms of class and form and figures?
Yeah, but what's happened to the horse? Maybe he had a bleeding problem. I mean, the Lasix might be the answer for this horse. But shipping to Nantes was a negative sign for me.
Yeah. I had a question, and I'm not. I wonder. I don't remember the conversation that we had in one of our previous interviews, but that there was one. Tell me what resonates with you to this. Somebody asked when we had Mark on the last time. He spoke about a particularly bucolic track in France that he enjoyed going to above others. Can you think of what that might be?
Probably that track is called Évreux, Evreux, which you can get to in an hour from Paris. Then you have to either take your bike or in the train or take a taxi because it's in the country. This is a country class with the funkiest grandstand you'll ever see in racing in any place in the world. It looks like a structure that if somebody dropped their cigarette, it would go up in flames. But the countryside is beautiful. And for those of you who don't want to go so far as Stray and you're in France, the other Deauville track, Clairefontaine, Gina Rarick did a video on that track, which is quite interesting. She's American trainer in France. Clairefontaine is just an absolutely beautiful track. It's within walking distance of the beach. It's got green hills. You see the horses coming around the turn. Clairefontaine would be another place I'd recommend for you to go.
Fantastic stuff. You're getting my travel itch is getting very strong as you're describing this stuff. And we'll talk more about French racing as the season goes on. But right now we're going to talk about Saturday's nightcap at Saratoga, where we've got quarter claimers, $25,000 claimers going 1 mile on the inner turf. If you're playing this pick six, Mark, how are you going to get paid?
You know what? You can't choose. I can't single this race. That's for sure.
It's tricky.
I have a horse I'm coming up with the horses that are the lowest odds in the morning line. So it looks like I'm not too brilliant on this race. The one that by the trainer long shot trainer standings is interesting is the number 1, the Last Zip, which is the highest odds of all of the morning line horses at 5-1. He's 1 for 1 on the turf at Saratoga. Joe Sharp has had some really good long shots. I'm not too excited about the jockey McCarthy, but he can get the job done. And but the interesting angle here, since I'm into poetry, is that Joe Sharp claimed this horse from his old boss. So what does that tell you?
It's interesting, that's for sure. I'm with you on the Last Zip in this spot. I actually made my second pick. I put Big Agenda on top, who I thought was interesting off the claim for Jeremiah Engelhard, who already has a couple winners this meet. But I like the last run from Big Agenda, making a move in the fastest part of that race, and I thought might go a little bit better cutting back to the mile. But the Last Zip has loads of angles. you've got a previous Saratoga winner, now second off the layoff, and in that last race was trying to close into inadequately slow fractions. And I was hoping it might be a little bit faster and set up better for him today. So I had a 3-1. You mentioned you weren't going to single, Mark. Who are some of the other numbers you want on your tickets?
Well, Big Agenda was my second probability based on the fact that the horse was claimed 4 times in the last 5 races.
Yep.
In fact, I'd recommend claiming the horse. Why not claim him and I think that the other touted horses also look good. I mean, number 9 Healing has a mild drop, loves the grass. Michael Maker is the trainer, and I'm predicting he's going to be the leader of the meet. And 7, I can't. Can you throw out Jack the Cat? Can you throw him out? I couldn't throw him out.
I don't have anything major against Jack the Cat. I was just thinking there might be more appealing options at better prices, but I wouldn't argue with the idea of having either of those runners as backups. I was just trying to gain a little bit of equity by getting stuck more into the ones that I like. But if you like,
I'm with you on the 1 and 3.
Yeah. But the 7 and 9 appealing backup options. That's an interesting one too. You mentioned the boss, the ex-employee claiming from the boss. This is one friend claiming from another, which you don't see too often, with 2 guys who've been on the show and 2 guys who've claimed for or who've trained for our friends and sponsors, Adelphi Racing Club, but with Rob Falcone Jr. and Ray Handel. So who knows? There might be some backstory there too with a couple of runners in this race. But yeah, I love it, Mark. This was great. Really appreciate you not only giving us your picks on the Saturday card, but also a little bit of an overview of how you like to look at these races. It's, typical to the philosophies you've put forth in your book. It's a little bit different than what you get in a lot of places. And I really appreciate you taking the time out and spending some of it with us today.
Well, if one of any of your listeners nails the pick 6, just let me know. I would be very happy to hear that. I
Definitely.
need some good news, and that would be the best news I can get.
We hear from people all the time who, even if it's just help with one leg, are able to score with picks on the show. And we encourage people, if you do happen to do really well, we love when they support a cause that I know you believe in as well, Mark. Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, our founding partners, you can donate directly to them, trfinc.org/players. We're actually doing a little benefit for them if you happen to be in Saratoga for a very inexpensive price. You can join us for bagels and Bloody Marys on the backstretch on Saturday morning. You can give directly through that same trfinc.org/players link, or you can buy our t-shirt. We've got a special t-shirt that comes baked in with a $50 donation to the TRF. I wish I was wearing it today. It's the green shirt. It says, "I won and so did they," with the classic TRF logo. You can find that one in themoneypodcast.com/oldsmoke if you want to support a great cause that way.
Pete, as an old claimer myself, I appreciate having the right to a good retirement. And so I identify with all the claimers that I've been betting on and enjoying for years, that they have a place to go to stay after they've raced. So this cause is really important, especially for us, because we derive so much enjoyment from this game.
The book is called Please Hold All Tickets. Check out any Mark Cramer book you can find, honestly. I've never read one that I didn't get something very positive out of. Mark, you did too good a job. You know what that means. You're going to be bothered again very soon.
Great to talk to you.
Cheers, my friend. The next segment on the show, Baby Talk, is brought to you by our friends at Gainesway. From top international bloodlines to rising stars on American soil, Gainesway has put together a stallion roster that is not only primed for future success, but is currently making its mark on the track, led by Caraconti's rising star, Spenderella. Make sure to check out their entire roster for 2022 and see for yourself the power, passion, and performance of Gainesway. Next up on the show, very happy to introduce our Baby Talk segment, and couldn't have a better guest for this one. He literally wrote a book on the subject of betting maiden races and 2-year-old races. From the Daily Racing Form, he is Dan Illman. Dan, what's up, my man?
Yeah, I'm always having a good time talking to you, Pete, and it's the best time of the year for horse players, especially if you like 2-year-old racing. Saratoga, Del Mar, the future stars are starting to come out.
That's for sure. We've seen in recent years your focus, at least in your daily work for DRF, shifted a little bit more to the Mid-Atlantic. But I know 2-year-olds is the thing that you've been very involved in and done the work on for a very long time. Do they have as much prominence for you as they have in years past?
They do, maybe not as much, but we still do a daily Spa Baby video with the very capable and talented Nicole Russo from DRF Breeding, and those videos are up every day on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for Saratoga, so check them out.
And speaking of the DRF YouTube channel, and obviously with this going up on YouTube, we can, hopefully get some good cross-pollination going with all the stuff you've been doing with DRF TV. Tell us a little bit about what that is and where folks can find it.
A great opportunity to take a look at different opinions from different handicappers all across the country. So we have Brad Free, of course, the ace DRF handicapper in Southern California. He'll take you through video previews of the Southern California major races. You've got the extremely fantastic handicappers, David Aragona, Craig Milkowski. They've got the Timeform US Pacecast Stakes previews with myself and Mike Beer and David and Brad and Craig Milkowski. And we've got lots more coming up down the road as well.
It's a fantastic team, and those are all people whose opinions I want to hear. We had the pleasure of having David Aragona on the most recent Baby Talk. Yeah, great getting his thoughts on just the general approach to 2-year-old racing, obviously much of which you laid out in your book. Since the time the book came out to now, how, if at all, has your approach to 2-year-old race handicapping changed?
I think with experience, I've learned, and it's always fun to pick a first-time starter and try to be, one of the ones that catch a future star before everybody else. But I think experience has taught me that experience is very important in 2-year-old races. And when you have an opportunity to see a horse that's run once or twice and has shown great promise, what a tremendous advantage those horses have over first-time starters, no matter how well connected or how well they've been working in the morning. Just that racing experience, the fitness edge they get, it's a big advantage. And we'll see that in one of the races at Saratoga this weekend.
Well, that's a perfect pivot to our first race that we're going to talk about on Saturday at Saratoga. Where should we begin, Dan?
Let's start things off with the opener, Peter. It's 5.5 furlongs. It's a really nice 2-year-old race. You've got some strong pedigrees in this race, albeit perhaps some of those pedigrees for longer distance turf racing.
That's right. And how much does that factor in when you see a pedigree you love and you're seeing them going this inadequate 5.5? Does that take a horse you're interested in and make them a horse you're against, or you try to keep an open mind in those situations?
I try to keep an open mind, and then you pivot to the trainer, and then you go into your formulator past performances and you try to figure out, does this trainer do well with 2-year-old first-time starters in dirt sprints? And with formulator, then you can click on those horses. Do those horses have stamina-oriented pedigrees? With first-time starters, there are the three main aspects. There's pedigree, of course. There are the workouts, and now we have the great advantage of having clock reports from all over the place, including DRF, and of course trainer statistics, because a lot of these trainers, they love to give them a race or two. Some love to fire first out. So you got to have the mixture, and I think if you're a first-time starter going against experienced horses, you got to have a little bit of all of them.
Yeah, that sounds about right. We've only got one who's run so far in this 2-year-old maiden that kicks off the Saratoga Saturday card. Tatum, the 3-runner, horse who showed some speed on debut back at Parks. You have any interest in this one potentially against some of these fancy pedigrees?
I have a lot of interest because even though this horse ran really well in his debut, he is a Park shipper with Abner Adorno aboard, which means he's got to be a price against a field full of first-time starters with your Motts and your Asmussens and your McGaheys and your Godolphins and Brendan Walshes. You're absolutely right. He showed good speed in his debut, and he pressed a horse that was 4-1, took some money. That horse backed out of it, and Tatum fought all the way down to the wire, beaten by a nose. He's trained by Danny Velasquez, who's done some good work with 2-year-olds over the years, horses like Brooklyn Strong, Lauban, and A Prayer in New York. So I think this horse benefits from the experience. He should show speed in here. And if some of these turfy, rowdy pedigrees come into play, his 5.5 furlong pedigree is just fine for me.
Let's talk about a horse another one that I think is going to probably benefit from having a run. Bourbon Resolve, installed as the 2-1 morning line favorite. Ian Wilkes, a trainer. I know he can win first out, but I always think of his trainees improving with each increment, improving incrementally with each start. What do you think about Bourbon Resolve as a candidate to win this?
I think he's one of the more interesting first-time starters in the race, but you're absolutely right. Wilkes trained horses like to get a race or two, get their feet underneath them. But this is a half to Misinterpret, who won the off-turf PG Johnson last year at Saratoga when that race was turned into a sprint when it was washed off of the turf. The source for $200,000 as a yearling. And just look at the bottom of this pedigree. The dam's a half-sister to two millionaires. Paula Silver Lining, a very good sprinter, and Dad's Caps, who won 2 editions of the prestigious Grade 1 Carter. So there's sprint over sprint in this pedigree. A couple of these workouts, including that big bullet on July 17th, looks like it came in company with a horse named Our Dream Rider, who I believe is entered in the second race on turf.
Well, a very interesting little collateral morning form angle there for Bourbon Resolve. Let's talk about a few others of these, including the number 2 Swiss Guard by American Pharaoh. Definitely catches the eye. This one owned by Winchell Thoroughbreds.
Oh, no doubt about it. And Steve Asmussen, just get the feeling he's getting ready to pop. He's overdue, isn't he, with these first-time starters? He's about 25% the last 5 years with 2-year-old firsters and maiden special weights at Saratoga. And this one is by American Pharaoh, sold for $150,000 as a yearling. The dam's a half to a stakes-winning dirt sprinter, so there is speed on the bottom of this pedigree, and the second dam won her career debut. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if this horse shows some speed, but I also wouldn't be surprised if this horse takes significant money.
Capture the Flag, the 5-runner in here for Shug McGahee, a homebred for Joe Allen. Talk about a sexy pedigree by a quality road out of War Flag by Warfront. You would think potentially the 5.5 inadequate, but going to get some needed experience. And it is interesting. Saya's getting the booking. I don't know. Maybe I'm underrating this one's chances. Where do you stand with Capture the Flag?
You just look at the pedigree. I think War Flag, was a Grade 1 stakes winner on the turf. I believe she won the Flower Bowl. And you look at this pedigree. She is a full sister to Lines of Battle, who won the UAE Derby and was a champion stayer in Hong Kong. So this is all route on the bottom, especially some turf. But these workouts, very interesting. Shug's had this horse on the tab for a real long time now, since about late April, early May, and some of these workouts look good. I think you make a very good point about having Sai as an aggressive rider aboard. Shug's first-time starters, we're used to them being taken to the back. They make a run, and you say, watch him next time. Luis is aggressive. Maybe this horse will show some speed.
Going to be interesting to see how that plays out. We might as well talk about the rest of this 6-pack. We'll go next to Team Leader by Street Boss, this Godolphin homebred you alluded to before. What do you expect we're going to see from him?
Brendan Walsh is a very, very good trainer, and I think that this horse is going to show a little bit of speed in here. Street Bosses generally do. Now, I actually like the Street Bosses sprinting on turf a little bit, but he wins 16% with juvenile debut runners. The dam's a full sister to a horse named Tizaquina, who is a graded stakes winner at a mile. It's an interesting mixture in the pedigree. Speed over stamina. I have a feeling this one might need one, but this is the typical watch the board.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Space, another homebred, this one with a Claiborne pedigree by Ghost Zapper. Bill Mott, you don't think of typically winning with first-time starters, but again, it's not like it's an impossible scenario. This one at a very big price, I don't know, might be a little bit interesting as an alternative. What do you think about Space?
And it does seem like the Mott trained first-time starters are a little bit more live and a little bit fit, ready to go. He had a debut winner, albeit in an off-the-turf race, American Rocket. Frank's Rocket's a little baby sibling earlier this meet. This horse has an interesting pedigree. Ghost Zapper is a very versatile sire. And talk about versatility, the dam won on all 3 surfaces. And this dam's a full sister to Mucho, who is a horse that maybe never really panned out, but he was also favored in the Hopeful as a 2-year-old at Saratoga and hit the board that day. So maybe this one will be early. Interesting that they breezed him on the turf for the last works. Got to get out of there from the rail.
You mentioned watching the board, and obviously you're going to need to know the prices before you really commit to a wager in this spot. But from this far out, if I tried to hold your feet to the fire for a selection or 2 in this race, how would you do it?
I like Tatum in here. I think the experience is going to count, and I know this horse is going to show speed from the gate. We'll see how he classes up, shipping up from Parks, but I think he's bound to be a price, even with that solid speed figure in his corner. Curious to see what Capture the Flag does. I know it's turf pedigree, but you mentioned Saez. The works look pretty solid. I think this horse will show a little bit more speed and surprise some folks. Shug could have found a 2-turn turf maiden special for this horse.
No, it's a very fair point. So it might be here with a little more intent, as that jockey booking suggests as well. While we've got you, Dan, let's do something we don't always do on these shows. We'll look ahead to a race on Sunday. We've got another really interesting 2-year-old race that goes as race number 6 for the 2-year-old fillies, going 5.5, 9 runners, because we've got an entry in here with the 8 betting interest. Where should we start? Who's the most interesting horse to you, just from a discussion point of view?
Well, there's been a little bit of buzz going on around the number 5 Prank, and I believe our good friend David Aragona, who of course makes the line for Naira, made this horse the morning line favorite. This is one of several Into Mischief babies in the race, sold for a lot of money. You got Todd Pletcher. The workouts look good. There's a lot to like about Prank in this race, but he's far from the only horse in this field.
The Into Mischiefs, I mean, at this point, if it's a race where, if we're talking about a first-time starter race where I'm looking to spread, I'm not going to leave any of them out. I mean, the numbers are wild, and obviously these connections you ignore at your own peril. But from a wagering point of view, perhaps we can find something as an alternative.
He's also a half to Mo Donegal, this horse, by the way.
That doesn't hurt the chances, though. The 5.5, not impossible. And you hear this about a lot of the buzzy 2-year-olds. So-and-so's best horse in the barn. A lot of times they're going to end up being better going longer. Now, the Into Mischief makes me think, I don't want to say that the 5.5 is going to be inadequately short, but when you talk about that damn side of the pedigree, it's not impossible. All the buzz could be true, and this horse could still be a good second or third in this spot. So with that in mind, from a wagering point of view, what's another direction to go? Perhaps another Into Mischief baby?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Maybe the number 6 High Class. This is a horse that was bought back. That's a horse that sold for $575,000 as a yearling. It's an Asmussen firster. The dam was grade 3 stakes place sprinting on a synthetic surface. It's a family of a horse that placed in the Wood Memorial, just a coincidence. This horse worked 2 back with one of those Buzz Asmussen horses that drew in from the AES list last week, and I think finished a wide second. I'm curious to see what this horse does. I think the price will be right for him, and I think St. Benedict's Prep, the first-time starter for Chad Brown, looks rather interesting as well. I know I talked about the experienced horses, but I want first-time starters in this race, and I'm leaning Into Mischiefs.
Yeah, I mean, that makes absolute sense, given some of these pedigrees and connections associated.
And before we go, Pete, boy, there's a horse supposedly at Del Mar on Saturday that has been working off the board. He's trained by this guy named Baffert. I don't know where
I think I heard of him.
His name's Newgate in the 6th race. And guess who he's by?
Is he an Into Mischief, Dan?
Yeah, he certainly is. And supposedly he can run a little bit. So maybe the 6th at Del Mar is a horse where we can watch a star firster, although there is another Baffert in there. And you know the rule.
We saw it the other day. It's not necessarily the buzzy one. He's got so many that right. They can come and pop up and get you. But yeah, I've heard tell about that Newgate as well. Before I let you go, any others that you want to touch on briefly in this Sunday 6 race at Saratoga, or do you feel pretty good about the 5, the 6, and then that one entry, especially the Brown train one?
Well, you know me, I could go all day long. The number 2 Check Engine Light, Jorge Abreu, underrated with first-time starters. Dam's a half sister to a horse named Arrogate.
Oh my goodness. Well, that has the potential to be very, very buzzy as well on her, breaking from the rail. Very, very cool pedigree. There's so many of them up here. And Dan, really appreciate you taking time out to chat with us on in such a busy time of week. Look forward to getting to see you in person. And hey, perhaps we'll do another one of these before too long.
Pete, you do great work. Love the show. Love the team you've put together.
You're too kind. We'll talk soon, Dan.
All right. Bye-bye.
In the Money Media, very happy to be partnering with Naira and Naira Bets. There's a free money promo code for new customers. You want to check that out, Toga200. Tell your friends, get them signed up. What else do I want to tell you about Naira? The TV schedule. We've got an easy place for you now to see where they're going to be when inthemoneypodcast.com/TV. That'll give you the full schedule if you want to catch up with JK, Maggie, Acacia, and the rest of the crew. And also contests every Saturday of the $300 variety. You can find more information about those at Naira.com and NairaBets.com. That's going to do it for today's show. I want to thank all of today's guests for donating their time and coming and joining us here today. We'll thank our founding partners, the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, trfinc.org/players, and also 10 Strike Racing. Great to see the purple and black in the winner's circle at Saratoga yesterday, and to get a time to hang out with so many of the different 10 Strike partners who've been around Saratoga this meet. Most of all, though, I want to thank all of you for watching, for listening, especially you In the Money Plus subscribers. To learn more about that service, go to inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. But really for everybody, and a reminder, if you can't support us through the Plus service, that's cool. You can do stuff for free. You can rate, review, and subscribe. Really helps other people find the show by, letting the algorithm know that people out there like you care. So please support us in any way you can. We really very much appreciate it. This show has been a production of In the Money Media. Holler at producer Craig, the soon-to-be newlywed. Such a pleasure to be working with him. We're so lucky to have him, and wish him Godspeed in his endeavors this weekend and beyond. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.